Reflect for a second. Why do entire societies, made up of intelligent, good-hearted people, fall for lies so obvious that years later history looks back in disbelief? Why do crowds cheer for leaders who bring destruction? Why do ordinary citizens support systems that enslave them? Could it be that the true battlefield is not out in the world, but within your own mind? That the real chains are not made of iron, but of ideas? Today we'll explore one of the most disturbing truths, how propaganda manipulates the human mind, and why Plato, more than 2,000 years ago, gave us a warning that still explains our age. Stay with me until the end, because Plato's final insight about truth versus illusion may forever change how you see modern life. Before we begin, take a moment to support this channel. If you value depth over distraction, wisdom over comfort, and truth over illusion, hit the like button, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments. Tell me, do you think propaganda still shapes your daily decisions? Your words may resonate with others who are quietly wrestling with the same thoughts. Together, let's build a space for thinkers. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is one of the most famous images in philosophy. Imagine prisoners chained in darkness, forced to stare at a wall where shadows dance. They've never seen the outside world, so to them, those shadows are reality itself. Now here's the critical insight. Whoever controls the fire and the puppets behind the prisoners controls what those prisoners believe to be true. In other words, the manipulators of perception hold power over minds. Does that sound familiar? It should. Today, the shadows are no longer flickering on cave walls, but on screens, TVs, smartphones, endless feeds. Plato was telling us, if you don't seek truth yourself, someone else will gladly supply an illusion for you. Centuries later, psychology confirmed Plato's warning. Propaganda doesn't just mislead, it rewires the way we think. It doesn't force obedience with chains, but with persuasion. Here are its most common tools. Repetition. Say something often enough and it feels true. Emotion over reason. Fear and anger overwhelm rational thought. Us versus them. By creating an enemy, propaganda unites people under a banner. Authority bias. If a respected leader or expert says it, we rarely question. Social proof. If everyone else believes it, we assume we should too. History shows how powerful this can be. Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, Maoist China. Entire nations swept up by repeated slogans, carefully staged spectacles, and selective truths. Millions didn't resist because the propaganda didn't feel like propaganda. It felt like reality. But here's the uncomfortable part. Propaganda works not because we're weak, but because we are human. Our brains crave certainty. Our hearts long for belonging. Illusions often feel safer than uncomfortable truths. Plato captured this perfectly in his cave allegory. The prisoners who glimpse the light outside the cave don't celebrate, they recoil in pain. Reality is difficult. Shadows are easier. That's why propaganda thrives. It doesn't fight against our instincts, it uses them. Plato would have called today's propagandists shadow makers. In his time, it might have been poets or politicians. In ours, it's media corporations, governments, advertisers, and even algorithms. Think about it. Your news feed isn't neutral. Every story, every headline, every image you see is selected by someone or something because it serves an interest. You think you're freely choosing what to watch, but in truth, your attention is being guided. And when millions of people consume the same crafted storylines, society itself begins to live inside a cave. Our caves today don't look like dark stone chambers. They glow with pixels. Every scroll delivers shadows, carefully chosen images, viral slogans, repeating narratives. Even humor can be propaganda. Memes reduce complex realities into catchy slogans. They make us laugh while quietly shaping our beliefs. Plato's point was simple. If you don't step outside to see for yourself, you'll mistake shadows for truth. And the cave is comfortable. That's why so few leave. In Plato's Allegory, one prisoner breaks free. Stumbling out of the cave, he suffers. His eyes ache in the bright light. Slowly, painfully, he begins to see reality for what it is. At first, he resists, but over time, he adjusts, and the truth reveals itself. But when he returns to the cave to free the others, they mock him. They cling to their shadows. Some even threaten him. Why? Because to challenge the illusion is to threaten the order of their world. This is the role of the philosopher, and perhaps the role of every truth seeker today. To question what others accept, to endure ridicule, to risk being misunderstood. One of the most dangerous effects of propaganda is not just that it shapes opinions, it shapes identity. When you absorb propaganda, you're not just convinced of a belief, you're transformed by it. Suddenly, your choices, loyalties, and even your sense of self align with a story someone else wrote. Plato feared this because it means freedom can be stolen without a fight. A man who believes lies is easier to control than a man in chains because he defends his own prison as though it were liberty. Plato's cave was timeless. Every era has its shadows. Empires once used poetry, theater, and religion to control minds. Today, we have news cycles, political slogans, advertising campaigns, and algorithm-driven content. But here's the twist. Propaganda today is more subtle, more personalized. It doesn't just speak to the crowd, it speaks to you. Tailored ads, filtered news, curated feeds. The shadows are no longer the same for everyone. Each person lives in their own cave. And so the danger is greater than ever. Not just mass deception alone, but millions of private deceptions. How then do we resist? Plato gives us the key, philosophy itself, not as dry theory, but as the courage to question. To resist propaganda, you must ask who benefits. If an idea is being pushed, who gains from your belief? Seek first-hand experience. Don't just watch the shadows, step into the world yourself. Tolerate discomfort. Truth often hurts before it liberates. Think slowly. Propaganda demands fast reactions. Philosophy teaches patient reflection. Breaking free isn't about rejecting all media. It's about never surrendering your power to question. But here's the tragic truth. Most people won't leave. Comfort is seductive. Certainty feels safer than doubt. Propaganda offers belonging, something our souls crave. And so, many remain chained, convinced the shadows are enough. Plato knew this. He wasn't surprised. He simply urged the few who could see to keep walking toward the light, even if the journey was lonely. So reflect once more. What shadows are you mistaking for reality? What slogans have you repeated without questioning? What truths have you turned from because they were too painful to accept? Plato would say this is the real task of philosophy, not memorizing theories, but daring to live in truth, to see through the shadows, even when everyone else insists they are real. If this exploration sparked something in you, support the channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And tell me in the comments, what's one shadow you think most people still mistake for truth? Let's step out of the cave together and into freedom.